If you've got noodles, cabbage, and bacon lying around, then you have all the ingredients to make haluski. Haluski is a Hungarian noodle dish that was quite popular during the Great Depression because it's cheap to make, yet it's so nourishing and good. So if you're on a little bit of a budget these days, or even if you're not, I think you're gonna love haluski, so let's make it. So we're gonna start off with about half a small cabbage, and please note that the ingredient amounts do not have to be perfect for this. We have to dice it fairly small, and I know that cabbage can be a little bit of a finicky vegetable to work with, especially this hard white variety. But you can make it a little easier for yourself by peeling off a few layers of those outer leaves and then stacking them. That way they'll be really easy to give a nice julienne cut, and then you can dice them from there. Now if you wanted to use a food processor for this, you can, but I strongly recommend do it in small batches and only pulse briefly, because if you make the cabbage too mushy, your haluski is going to be no good. So here's roughly the size dice we want for our cabbage. You want it fairly small because this type of cabbage does take a long time to cook and you don't want to be standing at the stove forever. So go ahead and dice up the rest of your cabbage, and if you are looking for some kind of a written recipe that you can print off and keep for reference, you can find one on my website. As always, I've linked it in the description below. And over there you'll find dozens upon dozens of other comforting, simple recipes like this one, so you'll never run out of ideas for dinner. So in the end, we're looking for roughly about 6 cups of diced cabbage, but like I said, if you have a little more or less, that's perfectly okay. Now I'm going to heat up this nice big pot and add to it about 5 rashers of bacon. And I'm going to admit I made a little bit of a mistake here because I didn't realize my heat was on full blast, when really you should always fry your bacon at a lower temperature. So that's why things are getting a little smoky here. Fortunately, as soon as I turned this down, everything was quickly under control, but that's a little tip for you to remember. Now, if you don't want to add bacon to your haluski, you don't even have to, because in fact, a lot of recipes don't even call for it. I think it's something you would have added only if you had it. But either way, you don't want to overcook it. Make sure you keep it still kind of floppy like this, and please do not get rid of any of that bacon fat in the pot. We're going to use all of it. And don't worry if you get a little bit of color on the bottom of the pot from the bacon. That's called foned, and that's full of flavor. Now, if the idea of using all that bacon fat scares you, you can pour it off, but you will have to compensate with some other oil. So now you want to cook all your wonderful cabbage right into the same pot, and now's a good time to start adding a little bit of salt. Not only is that going to start seasoning it, but it's also going to help it cook a little bit faster. And the last ingredient you're going to need on your list for making haluski? Good old black pepper. Quite a bit of it. Because the cabbage and noodles are so bland, you're going to want to be fairly generous with that black pepper because it really is the most exciting thing in here, next to the bacon, of course. So now we're going to let this cook on medium to medium low for about 20 minutes. You don't want the cabbage to be al dente or still crunchy at all. It's okay if it starts to change color here and there, but the main thing is you want the cabbage to be thoroughly cooked and nice and soft. Alright, now we're ready to add in our bacon, and as I mentioned earlier, a lot of recipes for haluski don't even call for bacon, but if you do have bacon or even some leftover ham kicking around, that's also another common thing to add to haluski. So go ahead and dice this up and add it to your cabbage, and boy, this looks good enough to eat on its own right here. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video and you're getting something out of it, then please let me know by hitting that like button. Better yet, if you make this, let me know in the comments how it turned out for you. That kind of engagement really helps the channel grow, and then I can keep providing you with these comforting recipes. So now I'm going to get a large pot of boiling water going for our noodles. Always add a little bit of salt to your water, and typically you use egg noodles for haluski, but any pasta will work. And if you're wondering why my noodles look the way they do coming from a paper lunch bag, that's because I made and dried these noodles myself. And if you want to see a video on how I did that, let me know in the comments and I'll make one for you. You're going to need roughly about half a pound of pasta, and these noodles in particular don't take long to cook at all. We're looking at about 4 or 5 minutes, if that. So now we're going to return our cabbage and bacon back to the heat, and we can go ahead and add the noodles. And notice that I don't care that some of the pasta water is getting in there. I bet you've seen enough cooking shows to know that some pasta water is good for your noodle dishes because it helps with a little bit of thickening and it just makes everything better. Apparently some people even water their plants with it, but I've never done that before. But anyway, that's basically all there is to making haluski. How easy was that? You may need to check for seasoning, and I definitely had to add another half a teaspoon of salt or so, and I loaded up with some more black pepper. Now, other recipes for halushki often call for onions to be fried with the cabbage. I personally have never made it that way because honestly, the simplicity of the minimal ingredients is part of what makes this so good. And they say it's Hungarian, but quite honestly, many countries in Eastern Europe are known for making halushki. My grandma used to make it all the time, and she only ever used noodles and cabbage. And it was one of the best things my older brother and sister would come home from school to. And did you see how easy and cheap it was to make? No wonder people ate this during the war. And it's such a perfect way to get your kids to eat cabbage because they don't really realize it's in there. Isn't that a sneaky thing? But anyways, if you've never had halushki before, I think you should give it a try soon. And who knows, you might like it so much that it might become part of your regular repertoire. And honestly, that would make me really, really happy.